My name is Katie and I'm from Australia, and I'm here today to discuss how we can bring together Indigenous and non-Indigenous business and community leaders to work towards achieving Sustainable Development Goal 8 of inclusive and sustainable economic growth. Unfortunately, in today's society, economic progress is largely seen as separate from and in opposition to social, cultural and environmental prosperity. And under our current dominant models of economic growth characterised by free market, fundamentalism and trickle-down economics, this is indeed true. Under the current dominant paradigm of single-minded economic growth for growth's sake, wealth creation often remains stuck in the hands of few and is most commonly delivered through Western-centric and environmentally degrading methods. This misses why we are seeking to grow our economies in the first place. That is, to improve the standard of living of humans all across the globe. What we need is a shift from the paradigm of economic growth to economic progress, where economic development is necessarily socially equitable, culturally diverse and environmentally nourishing. Australia's Indigenous people have always pursued economic development in this way. Indigenous environmental philosophy recognises the interrelatedness of the economy, society, culture and the environment. Within this philosophy, the nourishment of one of these realms, including the economy, concurrently nurtures each of the others and becomes stronger by doing so. My solution aims to bring non-Indigenous and Indigenous economic and business leaders together with Indigenous community leaders to discuss ways we can reshape our dominant economic and business models such that they deliver economic progress that is necessarily, simultaneously, socially equitable, culturally diverse and environmentally nourishing. Ultimately, the aim is to develop and deliver projects that will concurrently deliver value for all four pillars of sustainability, of economic, environmental, social, and I would add, cultural sustainability. The continued implementation and spread of such projects will hopefully serve to gradually shift our economic and business models away from pure economic growth and towards inclusive, sustainable economic progress. That is, these projects will work towards achieving Sustainable Development Goal 8. The solution has 5 key objectives. So firstly, to develop this set of projects to be carried out in partnership with the private sector and Indigenous individuals and community leaders. Secondly, to build understanding, trust and reciprocity between stakeholders and contribute to repairing the relationship between Australia's Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, which has historically been very problematic in Australia and across the world. Thirdly, to open up further employment opportunities for Indigenous peoples to have economic independence and to not have to rely on government welfare. Fourthly, to empower Indigenous peoples in the process of economic development and eliminate the association of economic development with the destruction of Indigenous culture. Fifthly and finally, to shift the dominant paradigm of economic development from growth to progress through the mainstreaming of such projects. Regarding the theory of change or steps for implementation, they are as follows. Firstly, the solution will necessitate engaging Indigenous community members and leaders in a process of consultation, both before and during the development and delivery of the projects, to ensure these community leaders and members' support for the projects and to determine culturally appropriate processes going forward. If and when this is achieved, the necessary stakeholders can be engaged. That is, Indigenous community members and leaders, consultants and cultural liaisons, as well as Indigenous and non-Indigenous leaders and members of the business community. Before meetings begin, non-Indigenous participants will have to undertake cultural awareness training, again to make sure that they, as individuals, follow culturally appropriate protocols. The first meeting would determine what exactly Indigenous environmental perspectives look like and how they can inform our economic paradigms, so that everyone's on the same page and understand what this actually means. We'll also determine how meetings will be running into the future to ensure they are appropriately frequent, productive, respectful, and allow all stakeholders to make a meaningful contribution. They'll also determine what everyone's aims are in terms of each stakeholder's specific aims, and determine a monitoring and evaluation and feedback process for meetings and projects going forward to enable continued assessment and improvement along the way, not just at the end of the projects. Further meetings will establish what exactly these kind of projects could look like, exactly which projects will be decided upon, and what resources are required and what formalised systems are necessary to deliver the projects. They will also determine a necessary method to communicate these projects to broader society so we can engage more and more stakeholders, spread these projects and contribute to this wider shift in our economic paradigm from growth to progress, so that this way of delivering economic development, that is in a way that is environmentally, socially and culturally prosperous, simply becomes the mainstream. In the final stages, the first round of projects will be delivered, monitoring and evaluation reports will also be delivered, and learnings will be discussed to improve future processes and project performance for potential future rounds of projects. There are three key barriers for this solution. Firstly, disinterest of the private sector. To overcome this barrier, we'll have to focus on the benefits of the private sector, namely the fact that, particularly in Australia, a lot of the time Indigenous peoples are a key stakeholder group for companies. Therefore, their involvement with this solution will improve their social licence to operate. Also, the creativity and innovation and high performance of projects that come from diverse and inclusive processes is well documented and should also be stressed to these stakeholders. Secondly, the disinterest of Indigenous community leaders is another key barrier. Again, to overcome this, we'll have to stress the benefits for them. Namely, that this is an opportunity to be at the heart of core decision-making processes that affect the future of Australia, decision-making processes that unfortunately often these people are excluded from. Also, this is an opportunity to open up pathways for employment and economic independence, and an opportunity to shift the development processes of Australia away from methods that often damage Indigenous culture. Finally, the mistrust from Indigenous community leaders will also be a massive problem, and the processes of continued and iterative community consultation will help build this trust, as well as the cultural awareness training for non-Indigenous stakeholders. Finally, regarding the next and immediate steps, I will focus on my ability to facilitate the first three steps of the project. So firstly, to develop and deliver Indigenous community consultation processes, to also engage non-Indigenous stakeholders, and to develop a cultural awareness training program. I will leverage the relationships that I have built working with Indigenous communities and also with Ernst & Young, a leading professional services firm which has a great influence in the private sector. For my final comment, I will just say that I'm reluctant to go into the exact details of the implementation of the projects themselves, because I will stress that the whole point of the solution is that these projects are developed in partnership with Indigenous and non-Indigenous stakeholders, such that we're truly working towards inclusive, sustainable economic development. Thank you.